All right, so far we talk about pen and paper methods, historical ciphers. We talk about historical devices like wooden disks, cylinders, and so on. But now technology advances and we move on to age of machines, then to computers. So in the age of machines, we have the most famous example, Enigma, because in the movies, people see it all the time because it was used in the Second World War. So technological advancement replaced pen and paper methods with machines. An Enigma machine is an electromechanical rotor cipher machine used in 20th century in military and commercial sectors like banking. So since people see it in the movies, they thought that Nazi Germany created those devices for just for military use. But if you had a time machine and go to Germany just before the Second World War, you will see that these machines are sold for people because in banking people were using it anyway. Okay, but with the outbreak of the Second World War, they started to use these machines. So at that time they thought that they were secure, but British mathematicians broke it. So this is why they had to come up with new machines, new algorithms, and so on. So it generates a polyalphabetic substitution cipher. Cryptanalysis of Enigma by British mathematicians and cryptologists with the initial help of Polish cryptologists changed the course of Second World War. They had to get help from Polish cryptologists because initially they couldn't understand the encoding because they don't know German much. So here the Polish cryptologists helped them to perform the encoding. Okay, so here's an example. It is like a keyboard. You just have letters here, but the rotors, the positions of it actually determines your secret key. So once you press a letter here, for instance A, depending on the position of the rotors, the ciphertext letter is determined, and to the paper it prints something else. But once you do it, the rotor positions also change. So if you press A again, now most probably you will see something else. So it's not replacing A with something else all the time. So this is why we call it polyalphabetic substitution. So it is not monoalphabetic substitution. Okay. So the weakness of the Enigma actually allowed the British mathematicians to break it, because in Enigma a letter is never encrypted to itself. Okay, this is something deliberately done. So this means that press the letter A 1,000 times on the ciphertext, you will see random looking letters, but never A itself. So this is actually done with good intentions, because they thought that if the letter goes to itself with some probability, for instance, once you write a German word with 5 letters, if you are very unlucky, all of those 5 letters may go encrypted to itself. So once you have the ciphertext and look at it, you might see some German words scattered around. So this is why they take this precaution, but actually this property allows it to get broken. So British did the following. So they capture the ciphertext, okay, and generally you listen to the watchtowers at the end of the borders, right? Because they are the last frontier. So they listen to this communication, for this radio communication. And since there isn't anything going on during that time, for instance, no war or any shooting, when they capture this message, they think that probably they send the plain text saying there is nothing to report. But this is there's a very special way to say it in German. Keine besonderen Ereignisse. In Turkish, this is asayiş berkemal. So in Turkish, you generally don't use it in daily life, but you might use it in military. So they thought that during the ciphertext they captured, maybe there is a word keine besonderen Ereignisse. So for instance, they get the ciphertext here, and below it they write this word and see if the letters are identical. So as you can see here, it is identical, and this means that this part, this ciphertext, cannot belong to this plain text, because Enigma doesn't allow you to encrypt the same letter to itself, right? So this way, they know that this isn't the case. So they position it next and check if they are different and so on. So for instance, O matches with O here. So it is not the case. But maybe this is the correct place. So if this is the correct place, what you do is as follows. You take your own Enigma machine and take the positions of the rotor so that this plain text goes to this ciphertext. So if you take those rotor positions, now you continue writing this ciphertext and see if it becomes something meaningful in the plain text. If this is the case, this means that you captured the rotor positions, which is actually the secret key in Enigma, right? So this impossible property, in the future, in modern cryptanalysis, we have a technique called impossible differential cryptanalysis. That idea is somewhat similar to this. So you are focusing on an impossible event, and from that impossible event, you try to capture the secret key. So this is how actually British broke it. And they built many devices for this. First, machines, because you have to try many possibilities. And in the next week, I will show you pictures from Bletchley Park to show those devices. But once they broke Enigma, Germans come up with better devices like Lorentz cipher and so on. In order to break them, in order to perform more, in order to try more possibilities in a shorter time, British had to build the first programmable computer called the Colossus. Okay, so this was a very huge technological advancement. Okay, so Germans constantly modified their machines during the war, and their latest cipher machines eluded elite cryptologists. So in the museums, even at the Bletchley Park, you will see some German devices which are still unbroken. Okay, so let me summarize for the Colossus computer. This is the first programmable electronic digital computer built in 1943, developed by British codebreakers at Bletchley Park to cryptanalyze Lorentz cipher. Alan Turing's use of probability in cryptanalysis contributed to its design. It optically reads a paper tape and then applies programmable logical functions to the bits of the key and ciphertext characters, counting how often the function returned false. As you can see, it doesn't have memory. It reads a paper tape, but it has a CPU, so it returns false or trues and so on. So it is as big as this room, by the way. It was destroyed by British after the Second World War because now they advanced technologically a lot, and the war is over. They were scared that the enemy might get this technology too, so they destroyed the computer themselves. It was reconstructed in 2007, and it is available in Bletchley Park in a museum. Now that pandemic is almost over, maybe in the future you might decide to visit the park, but still at the park, you cannot wander around by yourself. Somebody has to be next to you. Okay, it's still a little bit guarded place. So if you're interested in the history, there are good books like The Code Breakers by David Kahn, or the Code Book, The Science of Secrecy from Ancient Egypt to Quantum Cryptography by Simon Sieg. In that book, they mention many different techniques for encryption and decryption. And there is also a web page. I don't know if it is still valid. I actually put it here like 7 years ago. But here you can, perform operations on practical cryptography and so on.